Today on In the Woodyard, I got the new 562 XP Husqvarna. We're going to be testing out, we're going to be comparing it with the MS STIHL 362. Both 60cc saws or thereabouts. We're going to try them both out right now. Here we go. So the STIHL MS362C is 59cc or 4.6 horsepower, and it is a 12.3 power head. And here is the Husqvarna 562 XP Mark II. It is 4.7 horsepower and it weighs 13.4 pounds excluding bar. So there they are. We're going to compare them, doing some cutting side by side and give you my opinion. I'm going to show you the differences right now. Okay, so initially the differences are this has the caps that you flip up, and then you got to give them pretty much like a full rotation, and you get to turn them and they seat down a little tighter, which is one of the things that's a little different. Is the STIHLs have caps that you flip up also, but it's a quarter turn and they tighten up that way most of the time. I'm just joking. They're pretty good. They work that way really well. The next difference is we have a primer here, or a purge bulb. And over here, there is none. Look at that. Okay, another big difference. On the Husqvarna, to turn it on, you flip it up, you pull the choke out. And on the STIHL, what you do is you squeeze the trigger and then you flick it down into the choke, and it locks into choke. And then when you go to accelerate, to give it gas, it'll go out of choke. And the Husqvarna works basically the same way. When it's on choke, when you start it, you give it a squeeze and it pops out of choke. Another big difference that I've noticed is that the bar nuts. STIHL has the larger bar nuts and Husqvarna has the smaller ones. I like the bigger ones because there's no reason that either of these couldn't be the same size as what your plug wrench would be, like on your scrunch. So I do like a bigger one. Now this has keeper nuts. So this is an old model that does have the nuts that come off, but the newer ones do have keeper nuts. The one thing I think standard that comes on this one is this has dogs on both sides. The STIHL has the dogs on one side, and the new ones may have dogs on both sides. I don't know. This is the one I have available to me, so it's the one we're going to be using. So on the cover, this has a snap out. You can pop these off with your scrunch. You put your screwdriver part in there, pop these off, and you can take the cover off. Whereas with the STIHL, you got to screw them out with the screwdriver end of your scrunch, and then it comes off. And so that's a big difference. So on the STIHL one, they are spring loaded, so you only turn them a slight ways and they pop out. So they do pop off pretty easy. Whereas this is also spring loaded. It's basically the spring of this connector right here. So when you pop it out, they pop out really easy and they just snap back in place. So that's a difference. Now, one of the things that is new on this new model is there is no compression relief button like this that the STIHL has. The old 562s had one. This one does not have it anymore. I don't know why. They just don't. But this one does have it. The one thing is I do know, being that this is a smaller saw, you don't really need it. I start it just fine either way. But when you get to a big saw like a 592 or a 661, you want it for sure. It will start either way, but it is nice to have the anti-compression button that you can push. On the Husqvarna, I have my zip ties on here that I can swing out for measuring to 16 inches. From the tip of these out to the bar, it is 16 inches. And on this saw, it has this system, which is the Pro Sizer, and this you aim a laser to where you're going to be cutting for the 16 inches. That is, both of those are add-on items. Both of these saws have just been sharpened. You saw me sharpening them. And they also have 24-inch bars. They both have chains that have been sharpened several times. They're not going to be exact, but they're going to be close. What this is for me just to show you at them cutting and to get my opinion of what I think of them. So these two saws, both about the same size. There's nothing that I have to say good or bad about either of them. They're both fine saws, both great company. I have run a lot of Husqvarna chainsaws, and that's what I own a lot of, but I've also ran a lot of STIHL chainsaws. I have nothing against either of them. They both work great. They both make really good saws. This is not going to be a scientific experiment where I'm timing cuts down to the millionth of a second. It's just going to be my opinion and what I like about them and what I don't like about them. We're going to talk about it after I cut. Right now, it's cutting time. Okay, I just ripped with both of the saws. I think the STIHL chain was a little bit aggressive. The rakers might be a little low because it was jumping a lot, but it ripped just fine. I had to hold it back a little bit. The Husqvarna, I think, was probably the rakers were adjusted better, and I didn't have to hold it back. I just let it cut. The one thing, big difference I didn't mention before, the Husqvarna, when you go to turn it off, you push the button down, like when you turn off a light switch. On the STIHL, you push it up, which to me is not natural. But I'm sure if you run them all the time, you get used to it. So there you go. So there, I did a very little bit of cutting, but I can feel the differences. Number one, on the steel, the rakers were just a little aggressive. You probably saw the jumping. The Husqvarna does cut a little smoother, but it might be because the chain's a little newer. Only been sharpened a couple times, whereas the chain on the steel has been probably sharpened 2, 3 times, 4 times maybe. Power-wise, they feel very close. I did notice with the steel, when I would give it a little bit, it would bog down, but that's probably because the chain was a little aggressive. The Husqvarna seems to run a little smoother, but this is a brand new saw. It's had 3, 4 tanks through it. The steel has probably had dozens of tanks through it because it is an older saw. It's not brand new, but that's what I had available to compare. All I can say is either one you decide on is a good saw. Nothing wrong with either of them. It's whatever you like. It's whatever you've got for a dealer by you or a service. They're both excellent saws. But I will be using this one here a lot because as I get older and more decrepit, it is a little bit smaller saw, and it does handle a little easier than a 572 or the 592. There's a substantial difference between a 562 and a 572 or a 372. 10 cc's does make a difference, and the same as going up to a 592. It's a 90 cc saw, so big jump. And with the steel, I have run the 462s. I love the 462s. That's a 70 cc saw. Of all the steel saws I've ever run, I think that's either number 1 or number 2, and of course number 1 would be the 500. The 500 is an awesome saw, but again, that's an 80 cc saw, so a little bit bigger. But I really like the 462s when I ran several of them. And I'm hopefully going to be running more steel chainsaws, more comparisons as we go forward. And recently I've contacted a sales rep, and I'm going to maybe have some access to some steel saws and do some more direct comparisons and use them a lot more. And a lot of people on the channel make comments about, oh, I should use a real saw. If the saw cuts and it's sharp and you like it, it's a real saw. That's all I got to say for today, folks. Tomorrow I'll be back with another video for you, 5:30 a.m. Between now and then, go watch all the videos on my channel. There's 1,400 waiting for you. Good night, Irene.